Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Patty Pod. I realized last week I called it the Patty Cast, but I'm getting better at learning the name of my own podcast. So here we are. It is Sunday evening. We're coming to you live from the living room. Normally I'm in the bedroom, but Kate is in France this week. She left on Friday night and spent Saturday in Paris, where she got to watch the World Cup match of France and England in a Parisian bar with a bunch of other Parisians. So that was pretty cool. She sent me some video of the reaction when the final whistle blew. It looked like a pretty raucous and fun time. Kate is a Francophile. I don't know if I've mentioned that. She works for the government of France. She works for essentially their Ministry of Tourism. She tries to get press to write about various regions and attractions in France. So it's a bit of a dream job for her. She is, as I said, a Francophile. She loves all things French, particularly the cuisine and the wine, and I think her perception of the lifestyle, if not the lifestyle itself. She also loves the architecture and sort of the cityscapes and the artwork to some degree as well. So she's gone. It's just me and Gunther holding down the fort. And if, you may hear a little water going off, my teapot going off in a moment. So if you do, bear with me. It is Sunday evening, and I'm trying to get the evening decaf going as we record the podcast here. That's a ritual for me every evening. A piping hot cup of decaf coffee. I find it to have something, a hot drink, can be quite soothing, even take the edge off. Another phrase that I think people don't use anymore. It used to always be used in conjunction with booze, from which I abstain. But I find a hot drink can do the same kind of thing. Anyway, so water, I realized right before the show tonight, is going to be a theme of this week's podcast. Water, I kind of just came to me earlier, maybe a couple weeks ago, when I was thinking about what to talk about, and I thought about some of the passages in the Tao Te Ching, which is the central text of Taoism. I've read in some places that the Tao Te Ching is sold, is only second in its sales to the Bible in terms of book sales of all time. I really appreciate it. I like Taoism. I wouldn't call myself a Taoist per se, but it's probably the most traditional religion that I align myself with the most, or that I'm most drawn to. Some people, I think, say it's a philosophy as opposed to religion. It's can be kind of a gray area between those two fields. I think in a nutshell, I'm attracted to its going with the flowness more than anything. It's got kind of, it's sort of non-dramatic. It's interesting to me when I thought more about it. As I was growing up, I sort of had this idea when I was in high school about the difference between just sort of the subject of a sentence and a whole sentence. So just thinking about, the tree, as opposed to saying the tree is green or the tree is tall. When you say a whole sentence, you're trying to make a point or state a fact or make an argument or express an emotion. You're doing something. But when you just sort of think about the subject, you're just sort of contemplating on the being of the thing, so to speak. So when I encountered some of those ideas in philosophy, especially about being, especially in the work of Heidegger and some of the existentialists, I was drawn to that. And I feel like Taoism has that kind of approach where you just sort of recognize or get in tune with the being. And it's almost, they say these things like the Tao cannot be spoken of. It's sort of funny because the book is obviously trying to tell you about the Tao, but in a way it always is telling you that the words are going to fall well short of the phenomena or the phenomenon. And I love that idea because it, like, I've sort of hemmed myself in with my own thoughts and my own words and, you know, thinking I have seen the totality of something. And when I'm reminded that whatever I've said is just a mere, you know, brief description of that thing, then I don't hem myself in. I know whatever, even if I come to a negative conclusion, I've really only scratched the surface of a deep, deep abyss or a tall mountain or however you want to think of it. That's a little bit about Taoism. I thought about Taoism and water, because there's a passage in the Tao Te Ching that talks about water. I'll read it to you now. It says, "The highest good is like water. Water gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places men reject, and so is like the Tao. Indwelling, be close to the land." And it also says, "But water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. This is another paradox. The soft is strong." Now that's, I mean, what a great sort of expression of go with the flow, recognizing the ability to be like water. I've also seen talks and commentaries on Taoism, and this may come from the Tao Te Ching itself, about how water is willing to go to the low places. Like I just read, it flows in places men reject. And I've kind of found that to be true. I heard one guy who has a podcast about Taoism talking about how he would ride the city bus in Los Angeles. And that was seen as kind of a low-class thing to do because everyone drives there. And, you know, it allowed him to not have to have a car. And as a New Yorker, where that's more accepted, I know I've done that as well, and I've known the great benefit of it. And, it just gives you some more financial freedom and time freedom as well. So, and that's, that maybe sounds like a anti-money statement or something like that. And I don't mean it that way. I'm somebody that has always, I think, been pretty comfortable accepting money and earning money. I've never felt guilty for getting a raise or something along those lines. But yeah, so I do celebrate money, and if you have the money to own a car and it's convenient for you and it's not a stressor, that's fantastic. You should have that. But this idea of being willing to go to the places that men reject and being soft and fluid and yielding, how that will eventually overcome what's rigid and hard, is something that I think was so counter to everything I learned growing up in the West, maybe in the Midwest of the United States in particular. Maybe as an athlete in a contact sport in particular. But yeah, a little bit about water. That's a little bit about water and the Taoism and the Tao Te Ching. When I thought about talking about that, I had this flashback to this moment where I was doing some demolition work at a friend's house. And here's the water boiling now. I'm going to pour it into my coffee. I did go ahead and grind the beans beforehand, so you guys don't get that because, well, I'm a professional. But anyway, so I thought to myself, I started thinking about this Grateful Dead lyric that I was singing to this guy that was kind of a friend of a friend that was doing some demolition with me. And it goes, "Once in a while you get shown the light in strangest places if you look at it right." And he was like, "Oh, what is that? I love that song. I really like that song. What is that? I can't remember." And so we were talking about it. I said, "Oh, it's this Grateful Dead song." And the reason it dawned on me why I thought of that in the connection with water and Taoism was we were doing demolition at a friend's house in the Rockaways in Queens, New York. It was my friend's parents' house, right after Hurricane Sandy. And you want to talk about, the power of water, this thing that flows gently and is soft and goes with the flow, literally. I saw it firsthand when his parents' basement was flooded from floor to ceiling. And we went in there and just tore out everything. The ceiling, the walls. We just, there was stacks of old magazines and furniture that had been absolutely soaked. And it was like post-apocalyptic. The power was out for days down there. There was no gas stations that were open for the first couple of days. Then the lines were super long. It was spooky. I remember getting a ride out of there, and we had to drive to some area to dump some of the trash, and there was sand. All the streets were just covered in sand that had been carried up from the beach. I mean, 6, 7, 8, 10 blocks up from the beach, the streets were covered with sand, and it was pitch black at night. None of the street lights were on. It was crazy. Anyway, it was also this moment of really bonding with the guy whose parents had the house, because they were kind of in total need, and he put the call out, and like 6 or 7 of us, we were all friends from hockey, went down there for a couple weekends in a row. And, it was a terrible, scary situation. I was very aware that I was on an island, speaking of water again. Brooklyn and that part of Queens are on Long Island, the island of Long Island, not what's considered the suburbs that are called Long Island, but it's all on the same island. And, we knew that ships had to come in with gasoline, and that was the thing that kind of was really, I think, making people nervous, that they're having trouble getting into the port and that there wouldn't be any gas in the gasoline and people couldn't drive their cars. So anyway, it was kind of a spooky situation, and all wrought by water. And but it did provide this bonding opportunity. Like he felt so grateful to all of us, and he was kind of a smooth character, and he doesn't really show a ton of emotion. He's kind of a cool cat, and you could just see it kind of break through a little bit there when that happened. His parents were so grateful, and it was a good moment. I think it brought us guys together too, that we were down there together. So that's all connected to water. I have been influenced by Taoism. I try to avoid extremes. That's one of the things that is kind of advocated in Taoism. And I come back, that's kind of this, I think about that, and then I come back to this idea of the individual versus the universal. Like I think to myself, well, this must be a value for everybody to avoid extremes. And I think it is, but as I get older, I start thinking that we all look for these universals too much. I think that, for example, I want to avoid extremes, but I think some people, you have to be extreme in some way. Like, I think that's part of life. I think that's kind of the plan for everybody, is that you have a personality. I do think you have an essence to some degree, and I was taught that wasn't true by the postmodernists and by the existentialists. They would get very mad if you said that there was an essence. The existentialists especially. But I just think if you look around at somebody, especially think about someone who's passed away recently, like my grandmother just passed away, and it sort of brings into sharp relief what their personality is, because they're suddenly gone, right? And if you just think about a friend that you haven't seen for a while, like, they have a distinct personality that is like none other. Of course, they have interests that other people have, and they have character traits that other people have, and, maybe certain kinds of, a certain kind of psychological makeup that other people have, but there's only one of each one. You think about somebody in your life, and nobody could ever replace that person. Nobody could ever imitate that person in a way that would totally convince you that it was them. So I'm convinced that that's true. And anyway, I think we have as part of our personality some extreme, something, right? Like maybe it's about work ethic for you, or maybe it's about, even like an interest, an area of interest. Maybe it's about opera, or maybe it's about golf, or maybe it's about printmaking, whatever. And then you run into the wall. I think that's part of everybody's thing, even if it's like playing it careful. Maybe that's your extreme, is you try to be right down the middle and not have extremes. But you're going to have those things that will serve you, and then at some point, you have to learn to kind of integrate it into a way where it actually works for your life, because you kind of hit a wall. I feel like everyone hits the wall in this go-kart race of life. You hit the wall every once in a while. So, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that if you just keep looking for universal truths all the time, you're going to find, maybe a little hint about, some areas to watch out for. But I think that you have to kind of find this balance between accepting your extremes. Like mine are probably thinking about like being abstract a lot, like getting into abstract ideas, and that can get me disconnected from life. But that's never going to go away, I don't think. That's where I've come to. So now I have to just keep working on integrating it into my life. That's my take. I talked last week about idioms that people don't say anymore. And I think there's also, I was thinking this week that there are idioms that people don't know, we don't know the meaning of. For example, I don't think anyone knows the meaning of "it's all down here, all downhill from here." I've heard people say that in a certain tone, and I've had no idea what they mean. We'll be in some situation, and somebody will say, "Well, it's all downhill from here," and I'll think, what? Do they mean it's going to get easier, or do they going to mean it's just everything's going to suck? Because it could work both ways, right? Like generally, if things are going well, we say things like it's on the up and up, or we're heading in an upward. I don't know, up and onwards and upwards is a phrase, right? But so if you think things are going down, like you think of like the graph of a stock or something, or a company's earnings or something, that's a bad thing. But when you're going downhill, if you're on a bike, it's party time. It's you're a little kid. It's like, I remember riding my bike with my niece, riding her bike, and she was so stoked to get to the downhill part when she first started riding. Because you get to go. It's just gravity pulls you down. There's no hard work. You get to go fast. It's super fun. I've heard it both ways, and I don't think as a society, I've heard it as often where I think people are meaning like it's going to be easy and great, and I've heard it as much as people. I've heard just as much people saying it like doom and gloom. And again, I've heard certain situations where I feel like somebody will say it with a tone I have no idea what they're saying. I think another thing is that people don't know about champ at the bit or chomp at the bit. I think that the technical definition of that one is champ at the bit is sort of the historical correct way of saying it, and that's something about a horse that's in a stall before a race, and they're locked behind that gate, and they've got the bit in their mouth, which is like this cylindrical thing that's connected to the reins, and they're champing at it. I don't know where that word champ is, but it's obviously in that thing. You could so easily mistake it for chomping, because a horse could chomp on that bit. So somebody will come along, and I remember Obama was the one that I first got the idea that was he had said it's actually he had used it quote unquote correctly, champ at the bit, and I think I kind of thought about that later. I remember learning Wittgenstein had this idea that the meaning of a word comes from its use, so it's not that it's kind of against this idea that there's a dictionary definition that we should all be going on, or that it's, I think they called it the mimetic theory of language, is sort of against that, where a word is supposed to have a one-to-one correlation with an object in the world, and that's where the meaning of the word comes from. But he made a case that it was actually, how it's just the use of the word, and it's connected to this sort of social conventions and linguistic conventions that you learn before you even can understand how a word would work. And it's more complex than just, a kind of this abstract word standing for this abstract object in the world. Anyway, so I wonder if it's, such a big deal if somebody's got the quote-unquote historically accurate or dictionary definition of something. And that right there is sort of why I got into philosophy, learning this Wittgensteinian understanding. It was really about pedantic one-upsmanship. I was dying to have somebody to be in a situation where somebody used a phrase like chomp at the bit, and only to be corrected by someone else saying, actually, it's champ at the bit. And then that person can, refer to the Oxford English Dictionary or something like that. And then I'd come swooping in and be like, well, if we take Wittgenstein's theory of language into account, really meaning is derived from the social use of the word, and people would just just shake their heads in bafflement at my triumph. So yeah, that was a big part of why I studied. There was a lot of discussions about politics and at the dinner table when I was a kid, and when I kind of encountered philosophy, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to go one step behind these guys. They're going to be talking about, tariffs and, I don't know, gun rights. And I'll be, I'll come swooping in and say something about, well, of course you guys are all operating under the Hobbesian notion of the social contract or something like that. And that would be, I had dreams of family dinner table and cocktail party triumphs. That was part of the deal, but why I got into it. Speaking of idioms, getting back to the idioms, I talked last week about forgotten idioms, and this week I was wanting to talk about forgotten phrases, terms or phrases. I don't know why this came to me, but I was just having some inner monologue where a mom was like wagging her finger at me and saying, I don't like this behavior, Buster. They used to call kids Buster. Like Buster was like a gangster term or something, that we kids on the street encountered. One kid would be, I don't know, that Buster's a tough one. I am not asking him for his lunch money. He's a Buster. And then, mom would show she's hip by being like, I don't like this, Buster. I don't know. Or I don't know what it was. I always got a kick out of that. That and Sports Fan. It was that you would see like on sitcoms, those 80s sitcoms where a lesson was to be learned at the end of it. And, the kid would have like the boy. It was always a boy. And something happened. I don't know. He struck out at baseball, or he broke his toy gun or whatever, and he's pissed, and maybe he throws it and slams the door and, tells his brother he hates him and runs up to his bedroom, and then the next scene, Dad comes in, he's like, hey, Sports Fan, can we talk? Can we talk for a second? It's like, where do these guys get it? And I feel like nobody really talked like that, but somebody kind of talked like that, like one of those parents that really where parenting didn't come naturally would say something like that to a kid. I got a particular friend of mine, a friend in mind, so I think it was sort of accurate, but I also think maybe some of those parents honestly like picked it up from sitcoms. Anyway, me and a buddy used to always laugh so hard about that. Like we'd imitate a dad coming into the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed. And, hey, sports fan, can we talk for a sec? Yeah. Anyway. Speaking of sports fans, it's quieter around the house because Kate's not here. So, like I mentioned, she's in France. She is a bit of a sports fan. When the Lakers play, she goes absolutely nuts. It's kind of crazy. It's for those that know her, she's extremely even keel and mild mannered and pleasant. And but when the Lakers come on, she is a nutcase, and she is like one of the worst taskmaster, hard-ass coaches. Though she's just yelling at the team the whole time, like, shoot the ball, shoot the fucking ball, and get back and on defense. And she gets exasperated, and it's amazing. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you ever get a chance to watch a game with her, if you know Kate, you should really sit down and watch a Lakers game with her, because it's a whole different thing that happens. And anyway, she's gotten kind of a bad rap on this show. I was just listening to this song earlier. I got to talk her up a little bit. I was listening to One More Time, that Daft Punk song, and I play it. We play Jeopardy every day. We watch Jeopardy, and we try to answer the quiz, the quiz questions. And I hate to say it, but she probably gets like 60% of the answers, and I probably at about a 40-45 is probably generous to me, which pisses me off a bit because I spent a good part of my 20s and 30s trying to be smart. And but she just sort of does it effortlessly. She reads like crazy. She reads like 150 books a year, and we to the point where I had to make a rule in Jeopardy that she couldn't answer the question until the host finished reading it, because she would read. They put the text up on the screen. I'd be halfway through it, and she would have read it and blurted it out. So I was trying to give myself a fair fight. Anyway. But for some reason I had this uncanny ability to get Final Jeopardy, and I honestly think it's like some kind of psychic thing, because I'm not that good. I'm better than your average player, but I'm not as good as she is, and I'm close somewhat, but not as good as she is. But I get more Final Jeopardy, and I don't know what it is. I just seem to I always get categories or clues that are in my wheelhouse. So anyway, I have to rub it in a little bit because she beats me otherwise, most of the time. So I play this song. It goes, one more time, we're gonna celebrate, and it goes over and over again. That's basically the lyric, and I just start dancing around the apartment, and I put it on my phone, and I, kind of pump my fist with it, and so it's been quieter because we don't have that athletic, or I shouldn't say athletic, but that kind of a competition going on. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like she got a bad rap a little bit, so I wanted to set the record straight, just so no one thinks that Kate's not awesome. She is. Often I've thought about how grateful I am and how fortunate I am. I complain about a lot of things in my head, but I've always been quite sort of surprised that I found such a good match. And so I thought the other day, I think about how loving and wonderful and beautiful she is, and I just thought to myself, sometimes I think I must have an unbelievable personality. Now, don't think I'm sucking up to her, because remember, she is not a listener. She is not a listener of the podcast. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I think there's I talked about a lot of philosophical, spiritual things, personal growth kind of stuff. And I think part of that, sometimes you get this idea, at least I do, that you're supposed to be really passionate about your career, and you're not supposed to be there's this dude on TikTok that walks around New York, and he asks people what they do for a living, and he'll say whatever, and he'll say, what's the best part about your job? And they'll be like, the team I work with, or something new every day. And that's the kind of thing you're supposed to say, But every once in a while, there'd be this disgruntled guy and be like, going home. What's the best part about your job? Going home. And he's like, and, like that's what I'm not supposed to think or say, is this as somebody that's like a personal growth guy or spiritual guy. But the other day I thought I was going to change the lyrics to the Beatles song, and it would go, happiness isn't empty, yes it is, in box. It's an empty inbox, yeah. Peace and love, everybody.